Hey, somebody's got to find Waldo. You did? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to the Professional Noticer.
Good morning, Vietnam!
Here, you and I will use common sense and all the wisdom we can muster to move beyond what is true and go all the way to the truth.
What's that rustling noise I hear?
With actual listeners in more than 100 countries, I am the Professional Noticer.
I'm afraid you're just too darn loud.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. As the Professional Noticer, it's my job to professionally notice something for you, and nothing's off limits. So what's your question? Business? Spiritual issues? Got something on popular culture? Hey, we even tackle the odd conundrum like, why do some of the richest people in the world have the worst haircuts? Look, my purpose here today and with every show we do is to play the part of a best friend or coach. I want to help you live the life you would live if all your toughest questions were answered. The Professional Noticer is sponsored this week by our friends at Tucker ATV. Tucker ATV carries every make and model of Polaris ATVs and the big Polaris side-by-side, the Ranger Crew. But listen, these things are getting bigger. They're getting better. If you haven't seen what they have lately, go online. Go to tuckeratv.com and check this out. Beside the Polaris ATVs, everywhere in this showroom, there are antique displays, beautiful taxidermy. There's an indoor porch. It's just unbelievable. You've heard me talk about this before. You got to go sit on the porch swing. I mean, stop by. There's comfortable chairs. There's books, free coffee, a huge television set, and something very rare in the business world today, real customer service. There's a reason why Shannon and Lisa Tucker have done business with people from 14 states. And it's because of real customer service. They treat their customers like family. Visit the Tucker ATV Facebook page. You need to read the stuff Lisa writes. She's funny, she's insightful, and you'll feel like a part of the family as you join that group on Facebook. The showroom is on Highway 43 North in Jackson, Alabama. This is off the interstate, but worth a jog out onto Highway 43 North. Tucker ATV, the small town business with the national reputation. I'm telling you, the Professional Noticer, that's me, loves these people. All right, observations and answers are what we do here. I deliver the observations, but you provide the questions. And always remember, the quality of your answers can only be determined by the quality of your questions. I'd love to field a question from you, okay? Write me. The email is theprofessionalnoticer@andyandrews.com. And if we use your question, the Professional Noticer will send you your choice of the guided traveler experience. This is over 8 hours of a live video seminar, or you could choose the 100-year parenting, a collection of 53 videos, each between 10 and 20 minutes. And this is so much more valuable to people and companies other than just parents, because, you know, a lot of what we do with employees, with employers, with teams is parenting. Hey, this week, our question is very unusual, I think. It is from Sanford. Hey, Sanford.
Hey, Andy. I have 2 adult children, and both are interested in pursuing writing as a profession. Both read everything you write as soon as it's available, and our family has frequent discussions based on your work. Recently, some of those discussions have revolved around your style and how you perceive what you do. For everyone who's interested in writers and writing, we came up with a list of questions we would really enjoy hearing you tackle. Number 1. Who are a few writers whose work you admire and why? Number 2, what is something about your writing that we don't know? Number 3, what is your process for improving? Number 4, On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you judge yourself as a writer? And number 5, will you read us something you're presently working on? Perhaps a piece that's not been published? Thanks in advance for your answers.
Sanford, hey, thanks. Man, that is a great question. And, or that's a great bunch of questions. At least they're questions that I don't hear a lot. And so let's dig in here. I hope this helps. First of all, let me just say, if your family has frequent discussions about me, you need to broaden your horizons. I'm not sure I'm a great topic for frequent discussions. I appreciate it. I'm just not sure that you couldn't probably do a ton better. But hey, let's see if we can make your time valuable here. I'm trying to think through this. I took notes as you were talking, and so let's dig in. Who are a few writers whose work you admire, and why? There are a lot of writers whose work I admire. Obviously, I read a lot, and so I think answer your question in a way that may help. I would like to answer that question by giving you a few of the writers that I admire and tell you why. But I'm going to choose some writers that maybe you don't read a lot, or maybe people haven't heard of in the context that I'm going to talk about them. But let me just give you a few very quickly. One whose blog I read regularly is Gloria Gaither. Now, you have definitely heard of Bill and Gloria Gaither. You've heard their music, but Gloria is just an incredible communicator of the written word. I just, every time I read what she writes, it affects me in an emotional way, in an intellectual way, and so her blog is something I definitely recommend. Gloria's blog is lovesongtomylife.com. So check that out. Another writer who I don't know that you've heard of this guy. I found him by accident, but he has become one of my favorites, and his name is Michael Perry. He's in Wisconsin, and it sometimes aggravates me to find somebody that good that people don't know who he is. I talk to friends in Wisconsin. I say, you read Michael Perry, right? And like, who is this? And I'm like, good grief. It just makes me crazy. I was in Wisconsin several years ago on a stormy day, and I was in this little bookstore in Spring Green, Wisconsin, and I was just easing around and looking at some stuff, and this lady comes up to me and she says, "Sir, would you please join us in the basement? A tornado has been spotted a couple of blocks away, and everyone's going to the basement." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, okay." And I have this pathological fear of being bored. So as I'm following people down the stairs into this basement, I just grab a book off a counter, and I don't even know what I'm grabbing. And so I get down there, and literally this must be the only place with a basement on the block, because there's like 30 people or a bunch of people in there, a dog, a cat, some babies. It was crowded. It was summertime. It was kind of crazy. But I grabbed the book because, like I say, who knew how long I was going to be down there? But I after like an hour and a half, I'm thinking, surely if we were going to die, we would be dead. I mean, surely this place would already be crushed. It was a couple of blocks away when they saw it, and everybody's still, they seem happy down there. I'm not overly happy. I'm just waiting to get out. But so I was the first to leave. But when I left, I found the lady who had asked me to come down, and thanked her for the opportunity to come down. I said, "Hey, I grabbed a book." And so and I had looked at the price. It was a paperback, and so I gave her a $20 bill, which more than covered that, the tax, and I'm just being totally honest here. I never even looked at the title of the book. I looked at the price and to make sure I'd covered it, and went back to the house I was staying in, and just kind of put it aside. And I took it home when I went home, and put it aside. And the name of the book was Population 485. And I realized I had pulled it from the local authors or regional authors table. And I kind of moved it around a little bit a couple of times when I got home. But for some reason, one day I picked it up, started reading, and man, I was several pages in, and I thought, this guy is great. I mean, this guy can flat write. And honestly, I forget the subtitle. It's like something about meeting your neighbors one siren at a time or something. And this guy, Michael, what?
I was saying that's exactly.
Oh, you sound that's what it is. Okay, I see this thumb come up across, in the window here, and it's Matt going, "Yes, that's exactly the subtitle." But Michael Perry is a first responder in the town of New Auburn, Wisconsin, or was at the time of writing this book, and he just writes about the process and the stories of his family, and he is. I mean, I'm reading this book and I'm going, this is brilliant work, and just loved it. So I, go on Amazon and I look, and the guy's written a bunch of books. And so at this point, I've read Coop, Truck. I've read so many different stories and books. He has a couple of books of essays, and I'm telling you, he can write, and he is worth reading to learn how to write, because he talks about the process a lot of times, and he also brings an emotion to the words that I admire. So Michael Perry, by the way, his website is sneezingcow.com. He grew up there in a family of dairy farmers, and so a lot of the funniest stories revolve around his family and dealing with the animals. And I'm just telling you, it's brilliant work. Let me give you one more writer, Sanford, that I love his work, and this is kind of a different kind of writer. It's a songwriter. The guy's name is Jimmy Yeary, and if you're a member of Wisdom Harbor, you already know who Jimmy Yeary is. Now, you've already heard his work. Jimmy is the guy who wrote "I Drive Your Truck," the song that won Song of the Year for the CMA and the ACM a couple of years ago, and that's Country Music Association and the Academy of Country Music. He wrote Rascal Flatts, last #1. He's written 2 #1 hits for Kenny Chesney. The last one was Everything's Gonna Be All Right. And Jimmy has some songs that you are going to hear. Trust me, you will hear these over the next year, and you will know they are his, because he's put together an album. Finally, if Jimmy is like a best friend, a little brother, and he has talked to me several times in the past where we were talking about one thing or another, and he said, "Hey, I need to send you a song I wrote. I'm really curious as to what you think about it." And occasionally, I would hear a song and I go, "Let me tell you what I think about it. What I think about it is, you better not ever give this to anybody else to record, because one day you're going to do an album of your own, and you're going to need a song like this." And so now this album is It's not even named yet, but it's been produced, mastered. It's like well on the way. And there's 10 songs on this album that any one of them they're all brilliant. I'm just telling you. And so Jimmy Yeary, I was trying to think, one of the reasons I really admire Jimmy as a writer is because Jimmy knows not only how to do it, he knows why it works as it does. He can repeat the process. Some writers have one book in them, one song in them, but Jimmy can repeat his process because he knows how it works and why it works as it does. He said to me one day, he said, it's like everything has been said, right? I mean, every topic has been covered, but what we want to do is to choose a way to say something that attaches an emotion to it that people never felt before, or that creates a way of saying something that hadn't been said before. And the example he gives is, he said, I could say, I love my dad. And that's, true. He said, but I could also say, I love the man who taught me how to fish. And it says the same thing, but in a deeper way. So, Stanford, there are 3. There could be a bunch more. I could probably answer this question once a month and give you 3 different ones. But the second question you had was, what is something about my writing that you do not know? Oh, here's something you may not know, is that I'm slow. I'm not sure I should keep saying this because I wonder if it's a self-fulfilling prophecy sometimes, but I am kind of slow. I read about these people who say, yeah, I write 20 pages before noon. And I'm like, really? I haven't written 20 pages in a day in my life. I am very methodical, and not about how I write, but I am methodical about when I'm trying to get the words right. To me, it's like putting a puzzle together. And sometimes, have you ever put a puzzle out on the table and thrown all those pieces out there, and you're getting it together, but you keep looking because you say, I swear I'm missing a couple of pieces here. And that's sometimes how I feel about what I write. So I'm constantly underestimating the time it is going to take me to finish something, because I have in my mind what I want to do and how I want it to come out. But man, when I sit down, and it's not that I'm having like a writer's block or anything, it's just that I'm kind of picky about the words, I guess. And so that's something you might not know. We tend to read people and think, wow, that just like flows. And if it's decent writing, it should seem that way. But it's work. Okay, I suppose there's a certain amount of talent, but it's work to craft it, to get it right. You ask what my process is for improving. And I know that your family has sat around and talked about what I do. And so I am just relieved to hear that you think I have a process for improving, because that means you actually think I have improved. I suppose my process for improving is to read a lot. And I do. I read a lot. Now, I gotta say this. I don't read a ton while I am writing a book. I find that it can kind of throw me in odd directions. I think that sometimes it can distract me, or it can discourage me. I can think, oh my gosh, I'll never write a sentence like James Lee Burke. I'll never be able to touch somebody like Robert Rourke, and I'll never be able to put stuff out like Jerry Jenkins, or to make you cry every time like Gloria Gaither can do. And so I read a lot, but I don't read a lot while I am writing. And I believe part of my process for improving is reading with a particular purpose in mind. I'm reading looking for something. And I read different people to teach me different things. I may have told you before, I read James Lee Burke to see how do you craft a sentence that good. I mean, he writes these Dave Robichaux novels that are set in New Iberia, Louisiana, and man, he can write in a way that you feel like you're smelling what you're reading and that you're feeling the humidity. It's just, to me, it's brilliant. I read Bernard Cornwell to teach me how to tell a story, and I study what Jimmy Urey does to learn a little brevity. He's a songwriter. He's a incredibly successful songwriter. And so, the publishing companies, they'll give me 60, 80,000 words to make a point. Jimmy has to make a point in 2.5 minutes. They'll give me a long piece of rope to tell a story. Jimmy has a small time period to get that whole story done. And so there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to be said for that, because if I can do that many times in the process of a larger story, I really believe that a good writer can keep your interest, obviously, but a brilliant writer makes all the rabbit trails interesting, right? And when I'm saying rabbit trails, I'm talking about how we can be reading about something and the characters walking down the road and past some kind of bush, and then the author does 3 or 4 paragraphs on that kind of bush and what it's used for and what it looks like, and you're just as interested in the 4 paragraphs about the bush as you are about where the main character is going. That's just brilliant writing to me. You asked, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do I judge myself as a writer? Stanford, I read stuff that I really like, generally, and I read stuff from people who have succeeded over and over again. So it's hard for me not to judge myself as a writer by first judging Jerry Jenkins. Okay, Jerry Jenkins, what Jerry wrote the Left Behind series among about 500 other books, and so Jerry's a 10. Okay, so how do I judge Cornwell? He's a 10. Rourke, he's a 10. Gloria is an 11. So how do I judge myself as a writer? I see myself most times as a 7, and sometimes I'll write something and I'll go, wow, that was an 8. And sometimes I'll write something and I'll think, that was an 8. That was an 8.5. I'm getting there on that. So that's just kind of how I see myself. I I don't think I want to see myself as a 9 or a 10, because I think that if I do, I may let up a little bit, or think, okay, well, that's fine. And I don't want to think it's fine. I want to continue right now. There comes a point that as a writer, and if your adult children, Sanford, want to write as a profession, a couple of things in here, I'd say. One is make sure you read a lot, make sure you read on purpose, but also make sure you have a lot of room to grow and not be satisfied with what you have written. I find sometimes as I'm working to finish something, it's not time wasted, but it's time taken that I probably don't need to take at those moments. But I find I can sit down and start working on a paragraph or two that I have already written, and I'm just kind of making it better. And I do make it better, but there comes a point where you have to turn in your work, where you can't just keep working on it. I had that conversation with Austin about his knives, and if you're not familiar with Austin's knives, look at austinlegacyknives.com, and you want a great Valentine's present for somebody? Get them a one-of-a-kind, handmade, handcrafted knife by an artist. My son is an artist, and he has, at some point I had to talk to him about, say, buddy, this, I don't see anything wrong with this. And so, but Dad, there's this, say, look, I could keep working on a book forever, but at some point you got to turn it in, and you're continuing to improve, but your work is just incredible. So anyway, just a dad talking about a son here. Look at austinlegacyknives.com, and that's also just to get somebody a one-of-a-kind Valentine's gift. That would be great. He has some like in the available now section, or you can get them made. All of them are one of a kind, and they're all marked one of one. Okay, so here's the last question, Sanford. You said, would I read you something that I'm working on presently, perhaps a piece that has not been published? No. So thank you, Sanford. I'm just kidding, of course. Yeah, I'll be glad to. I'm working on the third Jones book. So the third Noticer novel. This is one called Just Jones, which references how he refers to himself. People say, okay, well, Mr. Jones. You go, no, Mr., it's just Jones. And so the name of this third novel is Just Jones. And there's a subtitle and all like this. But here is the beginning of a chapter where I'm introducing a character. And let me just do, I'm going to do to the point where I tell you, I'll do 2 pages. Okay. And this is to the point where I name the character with a sentence. All right. And it goes on after this, but I think you might get a kick out of this. But this was something that I really worked a fairly long time on. And of course, it hasn't even gone to the editor yet, so nobody has bled red ink over it at this point. But I'm trying, this kid is 13, this character, and I'm trying to describe what it's like to be a 13-year-old boy. So here we go, the beginning of the chapter. Allow me to state for the record that of all the ages I would not want to do over again, 13 is at the top of the list. A 13-year-old human, at least the male of our species, is much like a lion of the same age equivalent and gender. Even his voice is uncontrollable, and sometimes at night, when he's alone in the dark, what he imagined as a roar squeaks from his throat, more a cry for his mother than a declaration about becoming king of any jungle. At 13, there's an unforeseen low tide of self-esteem that arrives holding hands with a rising level of uncertainty about the world in general. These demons of doubt produce irrational fear, a gradually occurring false narrative of terror that might first have come to town unannounced, but is now steadily making its presence known. Viewed dispassionately, as one might watch a germ under a microscope, irrational fear can be understood as an invention of the mind, a self-seeking missile with load-bearing capacity that adjusts on the fly and will use however much weapons-grade material the mind has provided to completely destroy its target. Irrational fear is a creative misuse of one's own imagination, and while most often destructive, this type of fear is actually pre-armed with a shutdown switch that can be flipped, held fast, and locked. It's a mental gear that can only be triggered by intentional thought and contains the power to banish trepidation forever. Unidentified and left alone, irrational fear often finds a grip and begins to clench with cold, hardened fingers that squeeze the guts of a boy and lead him to another deception, this one about the opposite sex. The lie convinces him that the beast in his belly is a greater foe and far more difficult to vanquish than the harmless monarchs and swallowtails fluttering at the same time in delicate tummies of girls. Yes, life until now has been experienced from inside the safety of a carefully managed playground, but at 13, he hears and feels the gates to that sanctuary being unhinged. Seatbelts fastened or not, all indications are that the ride from this point on will be faster and rougher and portioned out with a significant reduction in mercy. As the consciousness of a 13-year-old pegs deep into the red zone, the world he once thought to be welcoming and without limits now feels cramped and unsteady, like an outhouse being nosed by machine onto a conveyor belt and shoved down society's fast-tapering throat. He finds himself struggling for space, and the adults who, not too long before, had circled him with protective arms, aren't as friendly as they used to be. Neither are they as funny. But then, right about the time he has gathered the courage to speak up, perhaps to talk with someone about what he is noticing, a huge funnel suddenly appears directly ahead, and the boy knows without question that he had darn well better fit into the neck of it, just like the other kids seem to be managing. And of course, he does. With a forced smile on his face and in nicer clothes than he would have ever chosen to wear, the boy is ground down the chute with little say in the matter. For at this point, it's the fate of almost every 13-year-old to get dumped into one big doughy mess with the other kids roughly his same age, all wearing somewhat similar clothes and having mastered a predictably limited vocabulary. Once in, not long after the mixing blades began their relentless work, he resigned himself to the inevitable and decided to ignore the pain, no longer attempting to surface and ride the top of the batter wave or swim to the edges of the bowl. The recipe was decided upon long ago. Blending was now underway. With the always interesting addition of assorted nuts and flakes tossed into the mixture along the way, the goal, of course, is to be properly rolled, cut into star shape, and baked through the industrial conveyor ovens of middle and high school in order to be inspected at the other end and labeled a perfect cookie. At that magnificent moment, society's hope, of course, is that he, along with all the others, might now take the opportunity to do it all over again, but this time for real money, at a state-sanctioned university to which he can remain in financial debt for the rest of his life. And during the rest of his life, if that man he becomes ever is confused by his lack of employment due to the level of difficulty he has encountered meeting people or contributing to conversations deeper than those about television programs or ball games, if he's ever discouraged by the inability to communicate an idea effectively or understand the basic economic realities controlling his very existence, then at least he can be content knowing that if a government agency ever again requires him to read a novel by John Steinbeck or to explain why he failed to perform a simple bookkeeping task, he will at least be able to identify a theme like weariness or the American dream and claim that once upon a time he was indeed able to pass Algebra 2. Oliver Sutherland was 13 years old. And then we go on and on about Oliver. And he becomes a major character in this book. So, there, Sanford, I hope you liked that, buddy. That's something I've written that hasn't been edited or published. And you and your family can certainly critique it over dinner anytime. Thank you so much. And I hope these answers are fun for you to hear. I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to an answer for you. Hey, before we get out of here, here's the thought. I know you can use Google to find a list of the best jokes to tell at your boss's next party, but there's a difference in knowledge and wisdom, right? Knowledge will help you find something funny, but wisdom will keep you from saying something you're going to regret. Pure knowledge without the wisdom to apply that knowledge can be dangerous. Allow me to suggest wisdomharbor.com. That's wisdom, H-A-R-B-O-U-R. That's harbor with an O-U-R. Go there now and be welcomed by a friend of yours, me. And I'll make sure you have a free 5-minute guided tour. Then, hey, become a member of Wisdom Harbor. It's only $17 a month. And your family, your business, your schools, every part of your life, we believe, can benefit hugely from being a part of wisdomharbor.com. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm the professional noticer. If you appreciate this podcast, I would certainly appreciate you going to iTunes, giving us a nice review. You know, of course, you can only review a particular podcast on iTunes once, right? Therefore, if you haven't done this already, please make today your day. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing the tiny bit of mental energy I have for you, seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, smile while you talk, shake hands with the kids you meet, and make sure you have an answer to the question, what things are you putting off for tomorrow that you could go ahead and do today? And so until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limpert. The Noticer theme written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. Gourmet fruit baskets provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional financial consideration provided by whisperedmovies.com. At whisperedmovies.com, we found the solution for comfortably watching a movie at your home when you have to be as quiet as a mouse. Hey, we've all been there. It's 2 a.m., the kids are asleep, the subtitles are distracting, the movie soundtrack is too loud, and there's just no way to enjoy your late night escape. At whisperedmovies.com, you can listen to all the dialogue in an equally volumed, whispered voice. There are no subtitles to read, so you can focus on the visual details. Just listen closely to Mel Gibson in Braveheart, William Wallace in all his blue-faced glory. Remember the line? They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom. How about this one from Robin Williams? Good Morning, Vietnam. Or the classic 1976 multi-Oscar winner, Network. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take it anymore. So come on, give whisperedmovies.com a try in your home tonight. Shh, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.